time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. James Bell.
Here.
Amy Callan. Here. Brian Chetney.
Here.
Tom DeCastro.
Here.
Brandon Legault. Linda Sereno. Here. Sam Tripp.
Here.
Alexandra Poning. Here. At this time, would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll offer the floor to the public. No one has signed up tonight, so we will move on. I believe there is an executive session.
Yes.
Reason?
Personnel.
Motion?
Moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You may move to executive session. Could I have a motion to end executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And if I could have a motion to return to the regular meeting, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mine's froze.
Next is the superintendent's report.
Yes, it is. Tonight we're going to have some special guests that are going to do a presentation on the proposed capital project. I'd like to invite our guests to come to the presentation table. Tonight we have Jim King from King & King Architects. We have Craig Daly, who is the architect that works with our district. You've known Craig, you've worked with him before. We also have some representatives of fiscal advisors with us. John Bick and Natalie Musso are with us tonight too. And they're I understand they're going to kind of share the presentation. So they're going to present some information about the work of our facilities committee over the last several years and the plans for moving forward with a capital project that pays an awful lot of attention to our building condition surveys and the work that needs to be done in our 7 schools, coupled with the finances behind doing a project like this. So I'm going to pass it over to Craig. Thank you.
You're ready to lead it.
All right.
Sit in the front row.
Welcome, Jeff.
Excuse my back. My apologies. I don't have a clicker. I'm going to be using the mouse. And just I'm not used to being rude.
Do you want to sit, Craig, or instead of stand? You look
No,
a
I'm
little-
fine. Do I look a little sketchy?
A little awkward.
Blood pressure?
I know board meetings are unfamiliar for you.
That's right. Sit for a little.
All right, good. All right.
Again, thank you guys for having us here tonight. I want to start with a little bit of history. I don't know if that's gonna go anywhere. I'll just leave it. A little bit of history of where we got to, where we are today. If you're not familiar, every 5 years, New York State schools are required to go through a state-mandated building condition survey. We did one in 2015. I think it's probably the 3rd or 4th in a series that we've done every 5 years. And we identified approximately $41 million of work across the district that within the next 5 years needs to be addressed in some form, either through maintenance or actual reconstruction, replacement through capital projects. It's not everything that needs to be done in the district. We usually carry a long-range plan that goes out 10, 15 years, so we're ahead of the game and proactive in that. But this gives you an idea of what we have to report to the state on what the next 5 years of potential spending would be for the district in order to maintain the facilities to where they need to be. The state requires this because they like to have an idea of how much money all the schools across the state are possibly going to need for capital work, and it helps them in their budgeting for those projects.
Greg, could you explain a little bit too about if something is identified on the building condition survey and it's not dealt with in a timely manner in 3, 4, 5 years, and all of a sudden it becomes an issue within the district and we have to make the repair, and how the state aid is impacted with that?
There's always a concern with projects, if I'm understanding correctly. For example, say you have a boiler system that didn't make the building condition survey, and you had a failure. The system broke, you need to replace it. It could be $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 type of item. The state would say, you may go to the state and say, I have an emergency project, we have this boiler that, failed on us, so we need to replace it immediately, we need to expedite the process of getting it replaced. The state always goes back to the building condition survey and looks and says, well, this isn't on here, so what happened, There'll be more questions, more prompting, and things like that. Kind of the opposite side of that is, say you're doing a project, and on the building condition survey, it says the lifespan of a boiler system at the high school is 2 to 3 years, for example. But you're going through and you're redoing the auditorium and replacing seating and refinishing gym floors and things like that. They will go back to the building condition survey and says, well, priority-wise, this needs to be addressed. How are you going to address it? Sometimes it's a letter from the superintendent that it's in our planning process, it's going to be part of a project that's forthcoming. That might suffice. But they may also say, listen, you may want to postpone some of this other work and focus on this primary system because it is part of your survey. So they do use that as a resource and compare what you're doing for projects to what is in that document.
Yeah,
To answer your question.
Just trying to emphasize the importance of the BCS.
It's very important, and it's as thorough as we can make it. We shoot for that, as well as updating our long-range plan to be in line with that.
I just have another kind of follow-up question to that. So am I hearing correctly that, this gets done every 5 years? This particular one was done in 2015? And then after it gets done, you have 5 years to make the corrections? Did I hear that?
No,
right, or
no.
Okay.
So we identify systems that maybe the system has exceeded its expected life, but because you have such excellent maintenance, you have crews that are maintaining it, we work with Mr. Crisafulli and see what's been done maintenance-wise. He may say, you know what, I've been doing fine, I don't have a concern about that system, it's gonna be good. But we'll put down 5 years because it's already out of warranty or past its life expectancy, even though you guys are doing a great job keeping it, taking care of it. So 5 years, we don't deal with it, we look at it again at the next building condition survey, and then maybe Mr. Crisafulli says, you know what, it's got 2 more years on it, I need to look at having a project with that. Then we put 2 years instead of a 5-year life. But it's one of those things that just kind of triggers, we need to look at these items and keep them on our radar as potential projects. So the state doesn't say you have to do these within the 5 years. It's really a planning tool for the district to say, these are some of our hot topics, these are some of our hot buttons that we're going to need to at least keep a pulse on through facilities and maintenance, or deal with as far as a capital project to get that in place.
And then that would put that in the general scheme of like an entire capital project. Those would have to go at the top of the list before anything else that's not on that list.
Correct. And as you'll see, these are some of the priorities that are driving what we're going to propose tonight.
You make a very good point, Amy, and that is that the building condition survey drives the priority items for a capital project.
Mhm.
Before you can do the wants, you have to do the things that we need to do first. And our priority is the health and safety of our students and the long-term condition of our 7 schools.
And is it, I think what Sam was leading to, I'm not sure, is that they set that priority list, they put that play, they don't necessarily put a time limit as to when we have to fix whatever it is that they found or that you've recommended. But if we don't, if we skip over the boilers to get new seats or new desks or something and put our students in a unsafe position, then the state has the ability to remove some of the aid? Is that what you were saying,
That's
Sam?
what I
Like,
remember hearing one time too.
I don't know about
Okay.
removing aid, but it will be hard for you to go with an emergency project
Yeah, they'll just
and
say
get
no.
a kind heart to listen to.
Right, they're not
They may
gonna
not
aid it.
necessarily say no,
Right.
but they're gonna really hold you accountable as to,
Right.
why did you do this, this,
Right.
and this? We've told you that these need to
Right.
be priorities, and you didn't address it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Our lack of attention to something that should have been a priority because we wanted to do something
Yeah.
pretty may
Their
cause a
ability-
problem
yeah.
later when we needed
Right.
emergency approval on an item.
Their ability to aid us on an emergency that they told us about
They
5
just
years
don't.
ago, they say,
Yeah.
I got you.
John, you want to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about
I
that?
can speak to that.
Okay.
For example, if you, let's say, use Craig's example of the boilers. Your boilers show up on the BCS survey as needing to be replaced. You choose not to do them, they fail down the road. SED will still aid you on that work, but it'll be over 15 years. Whereas if it was a true state emergency, you would get all your aid the next year.
Gotcha. So, yeah, so.
One other example, one other example I could add is if there's, and it's to Dean's point, if there's an item on the building condition survey, and I'll pick one, let's say fire alarm system, definitely a health and safety issue, and let's say there's an update required by SED from a code perspective, and it's on your building condition survey, then when you submit the pretty pieces, the auditorium seats or the gym floor or something that maybe isn't as high a life safety issue, and you try to do a project, they could come back and say, how come you're not addressing, or you need to address XYZ fire alarm system in order to get this project approved for building needs. So
Yeah.
that,
They could force
the
that
fact
in.
that this is driving
Yeah.
the future capital projects is
Sure.
definitely true, particularly in the health and safety arena.
Thank you.
So we also have a district facilities committee, which we have some board members that are representatives on, as well as district administration, and we pull folks in from the public or throughout the district as needed based on whatever topic or function we're talking about. And that's been an active committee, I think, since we've been here and probably before then, with the capital projects the district's has formulated in the past. And then there's the district's long-range facilities plan, which I mentioned is, we look out 10 and 15 years for all the equipment, and even though you do a capital project where we replace that boiler, the boiler doesn't go off the list, it's just, its life expectancy goes from 0 to 25 years. So it's still there, we still maintain that and keep that as on our radar. Some of the other things on top of that, building condition survey, is you also had New York State mandates, these things that occasionally pop up. You may recall one time they said, all your folding partitions that are motorized have to have all these safety equipment and things put onto them because there was one fatality of a child that got pinched in one of the closings of it or damaged it. So New York State Ed Department tends to be over conservative and say, one thing happens, we're going to have to make broad mandates for the statewide to update. Similar to the H2 lead, which the district, did all those efforts to have lead testing. Fixtures and issues were verified and found and either tapped off or whatever the procedures are with that. Some of the work that we're proposing is to deal with the remaining of that, replacing fixtures, upgrading domestic water lines, those types of things, so that we can clean off your H2O, the lead issue. CO monitors, again, areas that like science rooms and boiler plants and things like that that are using natural gas. There's a carbon monoxide concern. The district has done kind of what they call residential CO monitors have been installed, which have a life to 5 to 7 years. The intent of the mandate is that you have a permanent solution, which means kind of like your fire alarm system, your equipment, it needs to be wired in and it needs to be what's called addressable. If it goes off, I need to know it's not a building issue, it's in science room 102, so I can focus in on where the actual problem is. So some of these items, New York State mandates are built into this as well, and those are on top of building condition survey items. And again, building in New York State education, building and energy code. Our code in New York State, I think, is every 2 or 3 years gets updated. And the State Ed Department also has things that they provide. So even though you're doing a project every 5 years or so, there's a lot of code updates that we also have to be aware of that have to be part of those things. And then the operation and maintenance of the community assets. We're working close with Mr. Crisafulli and your maintenance department to understand the workings of the buildings for items that aren't necessarily on the condition survey or the mandates and the building codes, things that need to be addressed. Where, for example, you have window blinds. We've had them for 20 years. They look like they were from 1970s. It's time to look at refreshing those types of things. And programmings. Programs are always key, that we work with the administration as a connect with principals and teachers and staff to make sure the spaces that they're using, are being used to the best potential. Flexible furniture, where the smart boards are or whatever interactive displays, those types of things. So I will tell you, this is slide 2. I am going to move a little faster as you get through here, but please, like you've been doing, this is great. It's meant to be a dialogue. Please feel free to talk, answer questions, whatever you'd like to do. So we're basically touching every building in the district, school building. Kingsford through the high school. Kingsford, some of the items we've noted, and you'll see a lot of these are consistent because they fall on the building condition survey, they fall on the mandate issue. Life safety system upgrades, fire alarm systems, access control, security, those types of items. Roof systems, you may say, well, we just did roofs. We've been doing roofs, I think, almost in every project because you spread them out. If the district was to do a roof replacement for the whole district wide, it would be an incredible expense. So based on warranties and things like that, you tend to spread them out. We've been doing a better job now because the roofs we've been putting on are 30-year roofs. So where typically they were 10 or 15 years, now the replacement process is getting a little more drawn out. And that's what's happening here. Kingsford and I believe Fitzhugh both had not had the roofs replaced. I think they're the only facilities who have not replaced them with the last 5 or 7 years. Replacement of domestic water system associated fixtures. Whenever you see that, think of your lead issue. Replacement of interior floor finishes. You'll see some pictures in here. There's a lot of the VCT vinyl tiles and some of the other floor finishes. They're not wearing as well. They've reached their expected life, and they're going to start becoming an issue. Anything that's not asbestos related, we're proposing to replace, but anything that is asbestos replaced, we'd like to do it all at once because you get to the benefit of a larger scale and better pricing for the bottom. And then there's some masonry restoration and reconstruction work. So you can see from these pictures, I use my little pointer. It's just some of the masonry issues, the concrete foundation, some cracking and separation and things. To go in there, investigate why it's doing it, but then to reconstruct. We never say repair, so move that word, but we're going to reconstruct because I'll make sure you get 8 for that word. Again, around the perimeter. Some of the interior finishes, again, the stair treads. We apologize for the picture quality on the screen, but on your TV screen, it should look a little better as far as you can see the age and just the wear and tear that these stairs are going through. This is some of the VCT flooring, the newer products, they're green, so that means they put less vinyl in, and vinyl is actually the material that helped it expand and contract. So now it's more sand and filler material, which they tend to shrink over time, the tiles do. Once they shrink, because you're using water-based adhesives, you go over it with a floor machine, water gets in, all of a sudden now you're getting some popped up tiles and things like that. So you try to mitigate those things ahead of time. And then again, this is a portion of wall. A lot of this damage from our preliminary walkthroughs are showing that the masonry restoration work we will do, the sealing of the brick, caulking, things like that will help eliminate some of these moisture issues on the plaster walls.
So going just to the floor finishes, are you saying the whole floor would be replaced, or would it just be like with a different?
We would take out the tile,
Right.
prep the floor, and put in a new resilient floor. We've been using a rubber tile. You can go back with vinyl, but there's other vinyl products out there.
So it would be a different product, not the
Different,
same one
yeah,
that's
not the
failed.
same.
Okay, that's what
Yeah.
I
That's a
was
very
trying to
good
get at.
question, and I was
Yeah.
going to jump in and ask you to respond a little bit. It wasn't your work, Craig, but you know that the VCT tile, the vinyl tiles that are in all 5 elementary schools are from 2010.
Yes.
From my perspective, that's not old.
No, it's not.
So
And it's
are the
unfortunate.
products better now?
And I know it's no compensation to the district, but it is an issue that we've seen statewide, nationwide. Flooring failures are increasing where flooring systems are, regardless of the material, are popping up and coming up because of all the, again, mandates that are coming through for these manufacturers to provide cleaner, less smelly products that are not as harmful to the environment. So
It's funny because we replaced corridors, particularly at Kingsford Park, Fitzhugh Park, and Minetto. Carpet that was in corridors, in cafeterias that lasted 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
2010 was when it was put down.
Hoping that the products are
Yeah,
better.
and I was just asking Jim, so how do the products get chosen? Like, who chooses what goes down? How does that happen?
Typically, we recommend, based on our experience, and we know what's going on in the industry. We've gone through a lot of training just even recently with some floor issues and failings and how to do a floor so it's belt and suspender proof. The end is you get what you pay for. And at this stage, we're very conservative, so we provide for, one of our top of the line. So if, for example, if the VCT product is $6 a square foot, high, but $6 a square foot for replacement, for example purposes. We may put in $12, $15 a square foot to buy a better vinyl product or a rubber product that's out that, is performing better, as well as all the other substrate protection services. So it's actually going to stick to the floor, whether you go over it with a floor machine or not. And then when we get into the process with the district, we typically will meet with the principals and the administration and facilities committee and say, these are the products we're looking at, the color schemes, those types of things, and then we present to the board. So nothing's finalized until everyone agrees, like, this is the product we're using, why we're using it, and then we're able to price it with our construction manager and then bid it. Does that make sense? Kind
Yeah,
of the
so
sequence
is
of
it,
things.
are tiers presented? So it's like, if for this much money, this is the product you get, for
Yes.
this much money, this is what you get,
Yes.
and then the decision's made. But these numbers that are later on in the presentation are based on the high end or the low end?
I would say a conservative middle ground.
Okay,
So if you were to say to me, we don't want to have carpet in the corridors, and we want terrazzo.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't price terrazzo, but I did price a seamless quartz system or a poured urethane. There's so many options
Right.
to
Oh, yeah.
look at.
Yeah.
But if I came in and gave high ends on all these things, I'd be out.
right.
You'd be
Oh,
like,
no,
well,
I
thanks for
understand
coming.
that. I'm just going
And I
back
wanna
to
be
the
here.
whole floor failing in 7 years.
Yeah.
Making
It's
sure.
important to point out again that King and King were not our architects.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying him, I'm just saying in general going
And there
forward.
is, to go to your question, Amy, there typically is an industry standard material within the framework of what you want to spend. And I think that's what we got.
Yeah.
And we knew quite soon that it wasn't good.
Questions come from the floor also, or is it just for the?
Yes.
The board? I have to agree with your statements on some of the tiles. A lot of them, even though they are from 2010, they don't stay down. The mastic was poor quality to hold them down. So there's a bunch of areas in our buildings that have tiles that had to be, done over and over again just to keep the floors looking decent. And some of them are also hard to clean. And when you're waxing them and stripping them, they don't really take that kind of work on them too. But I'd like to ask you a question about your slide with that one picture on the right that showed the moisture damage.
Yes.
Is that a windowsill we were looking at?
Actually, it looks almost like a wall base
Yeah.
condition.
Yeah.
I think this is the tile base.
I was just curious about that, because some of in like Kingsford and Fitzhugh, we have some issues with plaster around a lot of the windows, and I'm wondering if that masonry work is gonna help alleviate that kind of moisture damage also.
intent. Yeah, Mr. Chris Foley brought that to our
Okay.
attention too.
But that same bubbling exists in,
Multiple buildings.
yeah,
In
in
multiple-
north and south hallways and staircases that are not
Right.
on window walls.
Right.
It's a plaster problem that we've.
I think there's a couple of slides that.
Yeah, I think it shows the
pictures
leaching
that-
or the breakdown of the brick.
Yeah.
Yeah, the brick and the mortar and the caps.
It's moisture
Could be
getting
a
into the
parapet
system.
wall from the roof that we're gonna replace. There's a number of different ways for moisture to get into the building. It sounds like we're covering all.
Okay. Okay. Did you?
Where was I? I can't remember.
You're on picture.
Oh, Fitzhugh. Again, same items. Life safety, replacement roof. It's nice being a twin building that had been upgraded throughout the district simultaneously, so all the systems are in parallel. Same idea, again, the stair treads, you can see some of the plaster work. Sometimes this is a result of a crack that's been patched, that cracked and patched and cracked and patched. So the intent of the project is to, why is it cracking, investigating that, and remedying So you don't have to keep doing that. And then redoing the finishes so that it's all on point. Again, I think as you mentioned, some of the window buckling things, usually you see like either the ceiling has failed or the moisture is coming in around the sills on the exterior. Again, the worn stair treads. And more examples of underneath the windows, moisture coming in. Plaster's a wonderful product as long as you keep it dry. And you can see, you know, when you start to see things on the exterior of the building, some of these dark spots, some of the anomalies between the joints of the brick, some of what we call efflorescence, just the washing down. These are getting constantly wet and washed, and it's going somewhere, not necessarily off the building. And then some of the other items such as just broken metal or broken pieces of stone. But not all elementary life safety system upgrades. Again, this is like the CO monitors and fire alarm systems, safety, security. We have exterior wall panels, exterior windows, and some exterior doors. Some have been replaced by the district or in previous projects. We just want to complete that job. Replacement of interior doors and hardware, especially for security. You'll see, I think, some pictures in here. Some doors still have the old knobs. We're supposed to have levers for ADA accessibility. Some of the doors are original, and as well as you can maintain them, 30, 40 years of kids and teachers holding them open, and they just wear out, and they're starting to show it. So replacing those whole systems. In security, we're putting a lot of those immediate response buttons on the doors now, so the teachers don't have to get their keys out to lock the door if there's a lockdown or an emergency concern. They get the button, they run, and get the kids in the corner. Again, domestic water, that's your lead issue. Classroom reconstruction, and there's a portion of the wing. I think it's about 6 classrooms. We're looking to talk about those rooms that need, basically the walls need to be reconstructed.
The 19.
Yes.
19. Library and cafeteria for 100 classrooms.
Correct. Thank you. And then there's some exterior site reconstruction. And again, here you can see some of the masonry. You know, masonry will last well, but it gets worn out. And these are just some things where the joints are starting to show their wear. Some of the joints around this louver, those are opportunities for water. Some of the wear and tear on the exterior doors. You can see down here with kind of the sill, the concrete's been patched and is starting to spall or come apart from the concrete. Some of the deterioration of the door frames, the doors themselves. You know, fortunately, we live in a studio where salt is cheap, so you know, but you know, having the doors that starting to rust out, and you know, it's increased maintenance more than anything. If the doors don't close, you have to call your custodian, they have to come in and do repairs, and you just keep throwing money in these things instead of getting it replaced and having a warranty for so many years and being able to keep moving on. And again, additional masonry restoration work. These up here, you can barely see, these are kind of the aggregate panels. Those have been an issue. They were a nice design aesthetically when they came out in the 70s and the early 80s. But they're just not an adequate material, especially for keeping weather out of a building. So those are some of the items. And again, this is some of the concrete work around a louver that's starting to show its wear and tear. I think these are some of the classrooms. These are these partition systems are called demountable partitions. It's like the old open school plans, like the middle school was. The intent was you could be able to flexibly move these things in and out, size classes, large group instruction, whatever you need to. Typically, classrooms have been set up and they stay there for however long. This is itemized on the building condition survey as this system really needs to be replaced. It's not per code. You're supposed to be able to have an hour of safety or fire resistance between areas of egress, your corridors, and your actual school classroom spaces.
These particular pictures show first grade classrooms in the 1989 wing at Minetto. These are a little different than what we talked about before in the cafeteria, which is 72, 73. These are actual panel systems. Down around the library and around the cafeteria, that was also an open building concept. Those were constructed with just sheetrock and furring strips.
So I don't think they go all the way up to the...
This is actually better. than the other wing, but still not up to code.
Yeah, because that actually goes to the ceiling. The other ones don't even do that.
Yeah.
Might-
And they had to
might
go to
even be
structure.
combustible material. I don't
Yeah.
even think it's sheet rock. I think it's panel. I don't know. I mean,
Oh, dear.
yeah.
Again, we talked about some of the site reconstruction. This is back loading dock. Here's a little site plan where we're looking at reconstructing the pavement in this area. Riley, again, life safety, again, this is another one with replacement interior classroom wall systems, including covers and lockers. They have, you'll see some pictures of the old pegboard. That's the wall finish, which I'm sure it was nice and flexible for the teachers. They could put the hooks like, you have in your garage and things to hang your tools and things on and do things for the kids and stuff. It's just an inadequate system for schools nowadays and for kids to be around. So replacement and reconstruction of those. Again, interior doors, hardware for security, replacing the domestic water, your lead issues, and mechanical system upgrades. We just did complete a large mechanical project for the district, a 2012 capital project, but there was some items that came about towards the end of that project that we couldn't necessarily roll in and cover financially, so they were dog-eared for the next project. They were items that were fine when we went into the project and not on the building condition survey that they came.
And then the next one.
Because of the length of a project is long enough where you sometimes get those coming up. So you can see some of the age of the doors. Multiple hardwares have been applied over and over again. Holes have been patched. But these doors are definitely original and have exceeded their life. Mr. Christopher was nice enough to show a picture. These are most likely smoke doors. And you can see that there's a nice place for the smoke to get through. So that's not what we want. We want the doors to be appropriate and up to code. Again, this is the pegboard system in a lot of the classrooms there. So these are on furring strips, and then the furring is usually either on masonry or whatever the main substrate is. We would go back in and probably do metal furring strips, and then come off with drywall, but also insulate and improve the efficiency of the walls. This ceiling system is a tabular system. It's kind of tied in. Sometimes it's even glued to like a drywall backing. It's not practical for districts where we need maintenance to get up there and pull data wire or excess equipment or check on the structure to make sure it's not rusting. Those types of things. And then you know how they are. They start to leak, the roof leak or something. They sting. You patch them. You know there's a patch there, even though the tiles are newer than the ones adjacent to them.
And that's
So
in the
it's
whole
just-
school, those tiles?
the majority of the area.
1956.
Yeah. So replacing that. When we replace it, unfortunately, we have to replace lights, so we put in LED lights. Now you're improving the efficiency of the space. It's a win-win for the district. Again, some of the pegboard and the ceiling systems, and again, the cubby storage systems for the kids. I'm sure in the 1950s and 60s, that was wonderful. It's just kids' coats today and their boots and everything else, it just doesn't hold up well to us. Middle school has a large portion of work. That building, at least since we've been here, hasn't had too much done to it. We did a little bit with the pool filter system, some minor modifications. We did the tennis courts, but really that's really the next facility that has the bulk of the work, similar to like when we did this building, Riley and some of the others in the previous project. So life safety upgrades, windows, doors, hardware, exterior and interior, mechanical system replacements. We've talked about boilers, I believe, in the past. I'm sure Mr. Christopher hasn't said it. We've made some remediations to keep those things going. They got another 2-3 years. Cross your fingers. These guys do a great job. Maybe another, but we need to get it done with on this project. Replacement interior floor finishes. Again, we're looking at this almost like a gut and rebuild of the building. It's an open plan scheme. We need to put in hard walls for classrooms, bring the ceiling or the walls up to code, replacing the doors, but you're not going to reuse the existing, etc. There's some electrical system upgrades associated with that as well. Raised corridor walls to meet code, I mentioned. Replace domestic water, your lead issues. Replacing lockers in the facility, as well as some exterior site reconstruction. And again, this is some of the mechanical equipment that has been very well maintained, but has exceeded its life, that we're looking to replace with more efficient systems, There's a lot of different options out there. We'll work closely with facilities to make sure we get the right fit. And then when you do it, you got to do everything associated with it. So the drives, the various big drives, all those types of things are all updated, not only for code, but for improved energy efficiency to meet or exceed, kind of proof of, future proof as best we can for future code requirements. Again, some of the issues with the unit ventilators and replacing those and the floor tile systems, you can kind of see here, some of the cracking and the floors are just starting to shrink a little bit.
That bucket is there, by the way, probably catching a leak from the ceiling.
I didn't want to assume that, but I thought the same thing when I saw that. I'm like, that's serving a purpose there. I'm sure Mr. Christopher took a picture for that specifically. Again, putting the towel here, I don't think is for aesthetic reasons. I'm sure there's some issues with water mitigation or just drafts coming into that room from the window systems that are original to that building, the 70s, 80s, I think it was. And it's just, they're due for replacement. Again, some of the older floor issues, curtain wall issues, you can see some of the panel systems are just, they're showing their age, they're starting to wear out. I'm sure a closer look, you'll see some gaps and some openings, you start seeing the inside, which means water's getting into the building. This is to emphasize that the track has exceeded its life. It's starting to delaminate in some areas. So we're looking at reconstructing the track as well as some of the field event areas to be associated with that, as this is your primary track and field location in the district. Layton, again, life safety, replacement interior floor finishes in some of the classrooms, reconstruction of the athletic wing. If you've been down by the gymnasium, you see there's a lot of where the old office is, where the nurses is now, adjacent rooms, there's a lot of little chopped up spaces there, OT, PT, special ed, all those little functional things. We want to be able to gut that as well as the locker room area and kind of reconstruct that, make the locker rooms actually more usable for sports to have access to from the exterior of the building, and kind of tighten those up, but also make those educational spaces really educational spaces, not, well, I need a wall here, this and that to make my program work. So
Would that include like a concession stand?
Not attached to the school.
No. Not yet.
So I'm saying like for basketball games, volleyball games, you go to some schools and they have like an interior.
we could definitely look at that as far as how the other spaces
Yeah,
carve out.
right, because I know that a lot of the teams, that's where they generate a lot of their money.
That's kind of your main gym for
Yeah.
basketball. and
Right,
volleyball.
so
Really
they
good
have
point.
it-
And
have
we
it.
show a picture
Not
later
kind of, it is.
on the lobby.
Right, rather than, right now, we just set up a table and everybody,
Yeah.
to have an actual concession area while we're doing all this work, it makes sense.
And I think that could possibly fall under lobby renovations too,
Yeah.
really just giving that a facelift,
Right.
taking it out of the 60s.
We have such a nice space there, it's big.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
For that
space there.
multi-purpose,
Right.
It would make sense.
Yeah.
So really added flexibility. Again, interior doors, domestic water, lead issues, and so campus-wide site reconstruction. We kind of package this with the high schools and it's all campus. Some of the existing lobby areas and just kind of sprucing it, brightening it up. Some of the doors, you can see where there's some old knobs, and then we put the lever handles to meet that code. And I don't know if that glass is even impact resistant. I'm assuming it is. But some of the chips and things are starting to delaminate and show their age. These are the locker rooms. They're really lost in space. They're original. They're showing it. They're bringing up the ADA accessibility, meeting Title IX requirements. All these things now, also STEAM owned. Now you have to just basically gut and rebuild these things. High school, life safety system upgrades, mechanical, replacing domestic water, locker room reconstruction at these areas. Music suite renovations, we're not talking necessarily the actual spaces, but the floor finishes and some of those things, especially the back hallway by the auditorium that has asbestos tile. We've got a number of areas that are dealing with asbestos tile failures and things that have been on the Herald report that need to be addressed. And then again, the site reconstruction. Again, these are the locker rooms, the facilities, age. I don't know. I'd probably hold it till I got home.
With no door.
Yeah.
High school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gotta be used a lot.
Yeah. Again, the showers, I don't even know if they're used much anymore. One of the nice things we've been doing is we do shower replacement. We don't have a lot of shower heads we're putting in like they used to.
Showers and
So you have the flexibility to do that. You also downsize your hot water system. So you, instead of having a tank that, half the size of this room holding a reservoir of hot water in case the showers get used, you just, basically, you're downsizing it to, or right-sizing it to what you actually use. And there's a considerable savings in that.
No.
So that's definitely part of, I was thinking about that earlier, like with every thing that's being looked at, we're also looking at energy efficiency going
Yes.
forward and making sure that whatever we're not just doing the bare minimum, but we're doing what we're gonna basically get a return on investment.
Do we get, is there any granting or funding from NYSERDA for being a more efficient campus?
There are incentives out there. We work with IBC as our engineering consultant firm, and they're really good at itemizing those types of things and getting us in line to hit those things. Ms. Chris Foley can maybe do a report on some of the things we've done. That's a 2012 project.
I got it.
But yes, we do take advantage of those things. And even if we design for it and you don't get the money, you are getting the money back through those energy savings
Right.
in the bottom line.
Right.
So it's a good investment. And then you take out the aid and
Yeah.
wind up
No,
it's win. Again, some of the floor finishes and just basically tidying up and refreshing some of the spaces. This is the asbestos tile work, some of the door replacements.
You can't tell from that photo on the left, but that's the original asbestos tile floors in the band room on the left. And originally, that was a tiered rehearsal space with oak levels. And you don't see it there, but that's the floor tile. But beyond that, it's just concrete.
Oh, back here.
They've ripped
Yeah,
out the
where they
terrace
took the-
system
Where they
over
took
the
out-
years,
Yeah.
and it's just concrete.
So it used to be built up with the wood and
Used to be
oak, and then
Here, which was how Ed Lisk wanted it, and then throughout the years.
it got deteriorated, and you
And
said,
they
just
ripped
get
it
rid
out,
of it,
now
we
it's
can't
just a
fix it.
flat,
Yeah.
tiled concrete floor with no trim edge or anything.
Right.
And the same issue exists in the course room, which we don't show. That wood tier system still exists there, but it's not, no, it's worn out wood, like a gym floor.
But you have an amazing music program in fine arts. They need to be able to have the environment that fosters what they do. Again, some of the mechanical equipment that needs to be replaced, this is one of the back hallways, just getting rid of this floor tile, putting in some adequate systems to improve lighting.
It's to the sound of
Again, this is the back hall, we discussed this tile. Again, this is the girls' locker room, I believe.
Yep.
Yep. Just some of the wear and tear and, the tiles, we dealt with the roof's not leaking, but we don't have any of those tiles to match right now, so get to them when you can. Again, the shower stall, it's like a ghost town.
storage.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing as like in
Hiding.
showers. It's all full of football equipment.
Yeah. football,
Hiding
yep.
spot.
Yeah. Okay.
Does mechanical work at the high school include hot water boilers?
At the high school,
Yes.
I don't believe boilers came up on that, but we can explore that with you and Dave and see what's.
With Dave, but just a question I have because I know that that's an issue there.
Okay, we'll definitely look into that, whatever's going on there, and see how.
Are you thinking of the hot water heaters, Jim?
Yes.
Yes, hot water heaters are. It's
Yeah,
part of
they're
what
in-
I call the domestic water system.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but the boilers, I don't.
Well, right now we're using our boilers for hot water
Yes,
as
yes.
opposed to hot water boilers or hot water.
Well, the heaters failed shortly after they were put in. That's why we're now using the boiler to heat the water. And under this new program, and hot water heaters back.
Yes, and that's why I mentioned, the storage tanks and things for the domestic
Right.
hot water is a lot smaller than you need. We're even putting booster heaters down the line just to make sure, you're not running a lot of
Right.
temperatures and other improved. But yes, we are dealing with that.
Thank you.
And are you aware that there's water that comes in by the math office at the second floor of the high school? It's probably by a unit.
That could be. I
that-
wasn't aware of that specific, but yeah, we'll get into that.
It's in the middle of the hallway.
Yeah, and could show you pictures later if you want.
It could very well be from a mechanical piece of equipment because all those roofs are new on the high
Yeah.
school. It's been a few
But
years.
yeah, if it rains really hard, there has to be a bucket there. Doesn't it?
And this is kind of part of the process we go through when we actually have the project before us and we start the designing of these things. We keep, these are the stakeholders, these are the ones that know every little thing that's going on in the building, really garnering that information and implementing that into the project.
And also in the high school, I know, sorry, that I noticed it on the elementaries that you have the treads on the stairs. But I didn't notice that that was in the high school. That's an issue there too.
In the back of the music area?
Oh,
Or
almost all the
everywhere?
stairs in the high school.
Oh, okay.
Well, the stairs in high school in terrazzo.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's like, there's spots that need to be addressed.
Okay.
They're terrazzo.
Whatever they are, they need,
We'll look at
something's
those.
wrong with them.
Some of the main stairs, sometimes the terrazzo, the water and the salts, everything get in there.
It's like, is the edges, the
the
very edges is terrazzo? It looks like rubber.
They may have put some nosing down.
Okay, so
because
the nosing, I think some of the nosing is being pulled away.
Trimming.
That's what the
Terrazzo failed a
issue
couple
is.
of years ago, and we could not afford to
No, well,
replace
no.
the terrazzo, so I think we put rubber edges in.
So I think some of those are starting to pull away. That's probably what they're.
And then we have some site reconstruction on the campus. We have a multi-purpose field with bleachers and the building out underneath the bleachers for team locker rooms, toilet rooms, concession area, mechanical equipment, things like that to foster that, press spots. And then the field is designed for multiple sports as well as marching band use. Basically just cleaning up some modifications here. There's storm drainage upgrades, there's water irrigation system upgrades and construction. This pavement is getting replaced. Whoever parks here can probably testify to the fact that it's long overdue. And it's the best thing to do is to get it into an actual capital project, so it's better, bigger bang for your buck than doing it out of your own pocket.
So, I'll start on the, where the, that's the, right now, original, that's our football field, well, used to be.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then the track, so is the track gonna be addressed at the, will that be resurfaced or redone?
At this point, I think, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
we went back and forth a number of times on it. I think the end result is we are gonna resurface it, but it's not gonna be like a 9 or a competitive level. It's gonna be more of a community, bring the kids from Lake to walk the track and do.
Oh, so like varsity track won't use this?
No.
No, it's not gonna be
The middle school.
correct.
So, but this is just for, now, is the field gonna be usable as a practice field?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be recrowned so that it drains properly, drainage will be improved on that field. And
Okay.
it'll be another practice field for the district.
Okay, and then down on this field here that's on the corner of Hillside and,
Multi-purpose.
This one right here?
Utica, thank you, I was heading in. Now, my concern with that area is the historical flooding issue in that corner. So,
We had conversations to that
Yeah.
at the facilities. What they do is they actually have a construction system underneath the field. It's a bunch of bladder tanks that consumes the water that they've created as opposed to the grass and dirt taking the moisture that would be created when you have a hard surface. You have to deal with it. So they create these bladders and it holds the water into the system, letting it out of a very small hole. And it doesn't exhaust all the water quickly. It has the bladder tanks to hold it and then puts it into the system slowly and manages it. It's engineered according to.
So
That happens.
it's another New York State environmental
Yeah.
conservation requirement that, based on the amount of site we have, that we're gonna be basically reconstructing, and the drainage requirements and meeting the codes, we actually are putting underneath this, like you said, a bladder, it's a storage tank system to manage the water, and it's actually sized for a 100-year flood condition. Whatever water would be proposed for that, how many inches per hour, or whatever it is, it needs to be able to support that.
Because,
Didn't
so
Corey
would that be
say-
taking all of the water, like, I mean, that whole
So
road
there's,
where, I
there's
don't
two,
understand.
there's two aspects to this. So the district's only required to manage the water on your property.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't have any control over the community or the drainage issues that the city's trying to rectify or anything like that. What we are doing is we're trying to make sure that any buildup of water is at least mitigated the best we can. So we may be taking some of this water that happens after a heavy storm
Yeah, that,
and going underneath our storage. But we're also elevating this field. This field is approximately, I think, 3
That
to
was
4
my point.
feet higher
Right.
than the field now. So you're kind of getting it out what I'll call a floodplain.
okay.
You're raising the field to
What
keep
if-
it out of that
And-
issue.
But the parking lot would
The
still be.
parking lot gets a little elevated more than that, but not,
Okay,
you know,
'cause I mean, that's what I was thinking, is obviously if this is taking all the water, the
Yeah.
water that's in the road is just gonna keep going into there, and then essentially we're correcting the.
correct. And one of the things we talked about too is along the walk, possibly building a 2 to 3 foot retaining wall system around the property line to again, kind of deter any of that
Yeah,
city
that's
water,
a
storm,
lot of water.
that storm surge away from the district's property. Will it be 100% fixed? No, not until really, the other issues are dealt with. But we'll be managing our end and making sure our property is protected, and that we're, not adding trouble to the neighbors or things like that.
Right, right.
That's not a yearly thing either. It happens every once in a while.
Correct.
But how do you tie into the existing city's infrastructure in that area?
So and forgive me, I'm not Corey, Corey's my landscape architect who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. We'll provide greater details on that. But basically, you're still kind of tying into the same line. We need to control the water going in. So even though those storage tanks are sized for millions of gallons of water, the hole that goes out is the same hole that's going out now. So it controls the flow so that we're not adding an additional surge to the existing system.
That's what the bladders are for, and they engineer it accordingly to whatever it is, and they just let it out of a smaller straw to not impact the infrastructure that
It's
is.
like a holding tank.
Yeah.
We drop it, fill it, and it recedes, and then we let it out.
And they do the math on a 100-year flood, it's ridiculous numbers that they come up with, so.
There's factors of safety and everything too.
Craig, would that system have a backflow preventer, so none of the water from the city's issue will come back into our property?
Yeah, I believe Corey mentioned that.
Yeah, you don't want that.
We don't want to blame, Yes.
Dr. Guo, I have a question for you. So I know that parking is like a big deal for like the high school. Would we be able to, well, not we, because I won't be here, but would they be able to park like in like the lots down here instead of parking on like Hillside and Liberty?
Question.
Well, it's
Or
good,
we
it's a very good
use
question,
that.
because we're adding significant parking, not only on the corner of Hillside Ave and Utica Street, which would be accessible parking for students and staff when we're not having events. We're also adding significant parking adjacent to the new tennis courts, which is now that caged area, that's Ed Center
Yep.
parking. We're more than doubling that space. So we're gonna be adding a lot of parking for students and staff.
How are you adding to the Utica Street lot?
I'm talking about the corner.
Oh, the Liberty Street lot.
No, Utica Street and Hillside Ave.
That's
Right there. That's all
So
new
that's a new
parking.
parking.
That's all new parking.
That's all new parking.
And then you're saying there's additional spots
And-
next to where we are.
And
Down where
the
the softball
the
fields
spots
are now.
next to the reconfigured tennis courts, more than double what we have in the cage.
Correct. And I can get you those numbers too, so Corey has those, to know what you have currently and what you're.
And I just have a, is Rhonda here?
Yes.
She was earlier.
I was just gonna ask, because I know she's on this, if we just have 2 fields, is that enough field? I mean, I just know sometimes like one team will be playing on, the current field next to the high school, another team will be playing over on Charles Street. Somebody else is practicing on the old football field. So
Yes.
what are we gonna do going forward? Like, now we only have 2 fields.
Well, we're gonna have a field, we're gonna have one on Turtle Street too?
There's
Get over that
field here.
softball and
Yeah,
baseball
that's a
field?
practice field.
There's a
Yeah.
field here.
The outfield, it's actually big enough to do that, I think.
We also have a big green space right there.
Yeah.
That would be another practice softball, baseball space. And the end zones, the south end zone of the current Layton Field.
So Rhonda was part of the whole
Yeah.
planning process as well as the athletic staff,
Yeah.
to see how it's gonna be a little different to some degree because, you know, you're gonna have to work, but she thinks she can manage the scheduling and everything like that, so, to make it work.
Yeah.
And is Layton's playground underneath that smaller ball field up at, that's,
Yes.
okay, just making sure
That
it's
is a
still
new
there.
location,
Yes.
relocated.
Yes. Okay. So the project financials, this is kind of a breakdown by building of the magnitude to get to the 16,180,000 that we're proposing. And again, this is kind of a breakdown. I thought it was a nice graphic to kind of show, you know, this blue is the 2015 BCS items that we're looking at, how much of the magnitude of the project. 3% of that's for the lead water, 1% for the CO monitor, 6% for other code-related items, energy code, operation and maintenance things, just those things that keep occurring in the system, and then 27% for like the program needs, classroom modifications and lobby prep and those types of things, as well as some of the other field items. And then I'll turn it over to fiscal if they're still here. You want me to click for you guys? It's just got
Yes, please, thank you. So John and I will go over, give an overview of the, how the project will be funded and also the impact to the district. So the project costs $60,180,000, and the district also plans to use $4 million of capital reserve funds to offset the borrowing. And then we also have to take into account debt service that is retiring. So retiring average debt service per year is approximately $635,000. And this represents the portion of the tax levy that's being freed up from the district's prior projects.
And then the majority of the project will be funded through state aid. And to determine these figures, what we did is we took the scope from King and King and went through it line by line to determine feasibility and compare that to the building's maximum cost allowances, which is a number assigned to each building by SED saying you can do X amount of work at this building and have it be aided. And with that, we've conservatively estimated that 88.27% of this project is aidable at the district's aid ratio of 63.4%.
Do you feel comfortable at that ratio that we'll sustain that, or could we do better, or is it gonna get worse?
The building aid ratio?
Yeah.
There are a lot of factors that go into that. Usually, there aren't huge fluctuations in your building aid ratio. I would say, I would feel confident that it's not going to change very much.
Okay.
But this, just to give you kind of an idea, if you were just doing a roof project, we always assume that the aidable portion would be about at the best 98%. Because state ed is going to find something to reject, just so they can say they did. So, and again, you know, working closely with fiscal advisors, they're very comfortable with this. You know, you never know with the district and what's been going on, that your aid ratio should be improving. I'm going to just go on a limb and say that just based on the conditions that they judge you on now are not realistic to your community and your socioeconomic conditions. So, and I'm sure you guys can chat about the business side of that.
So then the estimated average local share for the project is approximately $547,000 per year. And that translates to 0.38 cents per $1,000 of full valuation. And for a $100,000 home, the impact would be approximately $38 per year. And then the average tax levy impact is 2.14%.
Do those estimated averages, are they taking into consideration the STAR program and the enhanced STAR program?
Actually not, so this is not, this is without the basic and the enhanced STAR.
So people that have those programs would be paying less than that.
Exactly.
And this slide is just a graph of the project revenue and just to show where it's coming from, you'll see 55% of the 60,180,000 will be funded through state aid, and that's the 88.27% that's aidable times your building aid ratio of 63.4. 26% of the retiring debt that Natalie talked about. 7% is your $4 million capital reserve, and then 12% is your local share. And these, just to stress this again, these are very conservative numbers. I would fully expect that 55% would increase and therefore your local share would go down. But we don't like to, essentially we like to present the worst case scenario.
Yeah, you prepared us for the worst.
Yeah.
So next steps, anything on the financial end before I just kind of wrap this up? You can ask that. Just the board resolutions on seeker, project resolution and a vote date, January 2018. Then you follow the legal advertisement. I think that's kind of the timeline. And then we'll have public relations, kind of like project presentations, community cafes, get community feedback and educate them on what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how the cost breakdown will affect them. And I think we have a tentative March 6, 2018 is our vote date for the project. So with that, I thank you, and if you have any other things.
So
Thank you.
what was the January date for?
January date is for the required board approval on the actual project and a few associated pieces of the project.
Okay.
So that's why.
So
we're
first,
done.
at
They did
our
the
board meeting in
presentations
January,
today.
then we do.
At the the board meeting in January, then there are some required approvals.
Okay.
Yep.
And what's the timeline of all of that? All of these things to be done from start to
This
finish?
is well, I'm going to say, it's complicated financial model. Because of the way we're using retiring debt, let's see if I can go back. This is going to go back there.
I don't think you had a-
What's that?
I don't think you had a timeline, Johnny, but you
No.
did show the retiring debt.
But I can give you kind of, the idea is the retiring debt portion is 26%. In order to maintain it, that's over like 15 years. So this is going to be a long, I'm going to say long, it's going to be a lengthy process because we have to hit certain milestones with state ed department in order to recoup so that they allow us to continue. It's a complicated process in that John mentioned the maximum cost allowances. Basically, every student gets assigned a dollar value as far as the state ed facilities department is concerned. You have so many kids, you have an aid number that's called the maximum allowance that they're going to give you. They give you a maximum construction cost allowance and a maximum incidental. Usually it's a 75 to 25 equals 100% type of breakdown. At 25% incidentals is your architect fees, your CM, your legal fees, your fiscal advisors, all the ancillary survey work, geotechnical, all the things that go into making the project happen. State ed also considers site work as part of an incidental, not a construction expense, even though it's construction. You drive by, you see construction. They consider incidental. So it's kind of a way that the state controls how you spend work on site. They want you to spend money on your facilities, keeping them up to code, keeping the kids warm and safe and able to breathe the air and those types of things. That's the state facility department's concern. Paving, you should create a paving plan. Whatever they want to do, they can push back and say, you should be doing these things out of your budget, not out of project. So they kind of limit what you can spend. And every 5 years, and again, the state law is a little different, but every 5 years they've been recognizing a renewal or refreshment of those maximum cost allowances. So because of the site work on the main campus, we had to break it up into basically 3 phases over the span of 15 years, but they'll overlap the way they're shown, and we'll get into more detail with that as we move forward, in order to take advantage of those renewals of your maximum cost allowances.
So then, with a time period of 15 years, what happens if, say, 5 years down the road, plans change? Can you make changes to this, or like once this is approved and goes to vote, like, can any changes be made after the fact, or is that at a cost to the district? I'm just saying because 15 years is a long time.
So for example,
What?
Would it have to be revoted because you're voting?
I don't know, that's what.
I'm going to refer to Jim, but basically, my guess is, once your voters vote, they're voting on something that they understand. and
Like they're
expect to
voting
get.
on this specific thing.
So down the road, you say, you know what, we're not going to do baseball anymore. I need another softball field. That may be something that would trigger another community update and discussion with SED to say, how do we go about that process to change the scope of those types of things? And you have to bring in your bond council and things like that. You just can't pull out things. You could decrease scope. You could say we're not doing baseball anymore, and not, do any of those work associated with that.
But you
And
can't
that's
do
just money you don't
anything.
borrow.
Yeah, we're not
But
tied
the
to do
15 years
something
isn't
with the land.
construction.
We decide we
That
don't
isn't
want
a
it.
construction thing, that's finance. I don't know.
Well, it's part financing, but it's also how you submit the projects to state ed for review and approval. So the project is spanned out over a longer period of time.
But not 15 years.
Well, we'll go through that when we have the process. I can get that to you too. Since we presented it to the
Can you
facilities
give
committee.
a ballpark on, we're talking about
So-
approving and,
So for example, we'll
once it
call it by
goes, once it
phases.
goes to state ed, approximately how long is that gonna be and how long before we can break down ground? I think that it would give them a better idea.
So March 6th, we have a favorable vote and the community gives us approval to move ahead with this project. We'll have it broken down into phases. Phase 1 will be some work at Layton, some work at the high school, and we'll say the multi-purpose field and parking at the south corner. Okay? So
And that's the facilities committee, or you, like, how's that determined? Or is it
It's
based
our-
on
It's facilities, it's board, it's,
a collective?
this is the last time you're gonna
decision?
see me.
Yeah.
Oh, you wish it was, but it's gonna be like, oh, that guy, you should move into the district. So the part of the process, the design process, is 6 to 8 months, we'll say, of design. So for March, we'll say October will probably be an initial goal to submit to the state ed. We get something together, we're all in agreement of what it's gonna look like. We submit drawings and specs, because they give us the building permit, okay? They approve the project. It usually could take anywhere from 4 to 6 months. Okay, so you're going from October, November, December, January, February, March. March, April, you get your building permit of
A full
2019.
year after the
Yeah.
start.
So it's basically a year
If
after.
everything
vote.
goes good.
No money's been borrowed
Everything goes
yet.
good.
Yeah.
District's not paying any bills yet, except for architect, engineers, and those types of things. And then they're going into construction phase. Now, we bid the work, and it's probably 2 summers worth of work. So that's summer 19, summer 20, for that work to happen, as well as whatever's going on with the buildings. Okay, so there's 2 summers worth of work, and things go on in between too as well. So we'll say fall of 20, that multi-purpose field will come online for the district to use it for fall sports kicking into and start working into your process.
So from a taxpayer standpoint of view, they won't be paying for, if it's accepted, won't be paying the $38 per 1,000 until it's started, or is it once it's approved?
$38 per 100,000.
Per 100,000?
Yeah.
I'll look to you guys, because you know the timing of the financing and borrowing.
Because you're talking a year later,
Yeah.
even before it started, which is a new year,
Mhm.
going into a new fiscal year.
Right here. The first debt service payment would be in 2021. And we would time the borrowing so
That's
that.
important to know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
You're
you're
voting
sa-
on something that you're not going to be possibly paying on until 2021.
Right.
But we will have to do some short-term borrowing, we'll have to do a ban to start being able to pay some of the upfront costs, such as architect fees or attorney fees or other things. So we will do some short-term financing, which will be included in our budget. And then we'll roll that financing into the bonds once we go out to bond.
So you're looking at 547, roughly 547,000 a year is what was our responsibility, correct? So depending on how much we pull in originally is what we're gonna ask to borrow then. Yes? We're not gonna just say we're gonna pull in 547,000 2 years in advance before project work starts.
No, not
No.
until 2021.
No.
Well, there's a cash flow analysis that they'll do based on what we estimate our, needs are gonna be as we go throughout the whole process.
Okay.
Where does the mechanical work at the middle school fall into play as far as timeline?
That would be phase one, so that would fall under that similar lines. Yeah.
And it's recognized that way, that's why it is phase one, because everybody knows how bad it is.
Yes.
Now, going back to our example, we have SED approval in March of 2019. They're not gonna let you recoup that site work maximum cost allowance until probably 4 or 5 years later, 2024. So we back out when we need to do the drawings and the work and submit those things. Now, there's a little bit of a gap there, but what we're gonna fill that gap with is what we call the phase two, which is Fitzhugh, Kingsford, Riley, the other buildings that we talked about. So we do stage some of those things, so there's gonna be work going on. We're not stopping that.
Continually.
Yeah.
But yes, but then we're boom, 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 managing those timelines in order to get those points up.
So what are you thinking, Greg, 3 phases?
3, hopefully not 4, yeah. And again, it's all how we work with fiscal to make sure we're maximizing
Would the
those aids.
the Kingsford and Fitzhugh roofs, would they be part of phase 1?
They'd be part of phase 2, which would be almost parallel to that. Yeah, phase 2 is gonna be really right close behind it.
So, I have another question too, and it's something that I asked, a long time ago. If, this is going forward 15 years, did you guys first of all, I want to thank all of you guys on the facilities committee for all the time you guys have put into this, and meant to start off with that, so I will say that, and to all the people who aren't here. But, did you guys look at, the trends of, enrollment numbers, and, they're going down, they're staying the same, they're going up? Do we need 7 schools? You know what I'm saying? If we're gonna make all of these changes and invest all this money, did you guys initially look at any possibility of eliminating an elementary school, moving the 6th grade to the middle school? If we're gonna be doing, the middle school sounds like a gut job. So if this is an idea that we could potentially do, I would say now's the time to talk about it before we go and spend whatever the number was on the middle school. So,
Our enrollment is actually slightly on the increase. We're now the largest school district in the county. For a while, our enrollment was dropping. It plateaued for a while. Now it's starting to rebound slightly. It's impossible to know what might happen in 10 or 15 years with enrollment. But remember, originally when we talked about that right-sizing our district, we talked about the possibility of repurposing Layton and not using it as a K-6 school. But we can't close the school because we have bonds on them. That's why we switched gears at the time and decided to close and sell the Ed Center and repurpose Layton in another way, by making it a smaller elementary school, a school that would always be smaller. And we've occupied this wing quite comfortably. And so we've moved in the direction of repurposing the space that we already have instead of closing one.
Mhm.
It's impossible to know what will happen in 10 to 15 years. Now, the whole concept of moving 6th grade to the middle school is something that we've had committees on multiple times before. If we're gonna move the 6th grade to the middle school, what we would be doing is reducing the size of our currently the 5 elementary schools we have that are good size for the enrollment, and it would take more than a gut job at the middle school, it would take an addition. It would be more. Middle schools are not suitable for 6th grade right now.
Right.
But if the bigger conversation is, what's the industry standard, what does the research say about 6, 7, 8 configured middle school, 7, 8 configured middle school, 5, 8 middle school. We've had studies on those over the years as well.
Yep.
And there are debates on either side, whether we, Mary Beth would love 6th grade at the middle school.
So we certainly don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what the enrollment will be in 10 years. But if we're going to be doing some work in each one of these schools, it might behoove us, if we're gonna do bonding again, we should probably have a real serious sit-down discussion. That if the enrollment did drop and we did think about closing the building, we'd have to identify that building and probably not borrow money on that building. Because then, 10 years down the road, when we decided we need to get rid of a building, that building would be able to be sold.
I think it's important to remember, though, that we can't just anticipate closing the school and then giving up on it until the time comes when we might close it. We still have to maintain the integrity of the building in terms of all the things that are
Still
being
kids
held.
there.
Even if we were to
I'm not saying don't do the
No,
work,
he-
I'm
no,
saying
no.
don't borrow money on that.
Yeah, don't borrow
Right.
money and provide us the
Don't
opportunity at a
don't
later
Right.
date, because we don't even
Don't
have a
incur any
choice
more
right
debt.
now.
Right. Don't increase the problems around not being able to sell it. Yeah. The idea of selling a building, we have a need for the 7 schools that we have. I have some ideas, I've shared ideas with the board before we decided to sell the Ed Center about ways to repurpose particular schools in our district. Even if we didn't have K-6 programming in an elementary school, there are ways to bring in additional funding to our district and also do some creative instructional programming and continuing to bring state aid. Remember, you close a school, you're shutting up. There are some benefits to keeping the schools open. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
We're at an important juncture right now.
Yeah,
You gotta make
I
a
don't think
decision
we're,
whether to move forward or not.
yeah, I don't think we're talking about actually performing any of those
Yeah.
actions. I think we're talking
Right.
about preparing ourselves for choices that may have to be made
Yep.
in the future, sometime 7, 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
to not be left in the situation that we are now, where we don't have a choice. Right, we couldn't make that choice if we wanted to.
Right, I
Can't
just,
close
yeah.
one now, right?
Right.
Right, I just think that it's important with the amount of money and what we're talking about doing here, and also to always have that we're looking into the future, and that we're really doing what is in the best interest of our students and our community, not just today because we have to do it, but in 15 years from now. And so I think having some of these discussions is important because if we make the decision and then we decide to make a change, that's why I asked that question, like, what if down the road it does make sense and we do have the discussion and it makes sense to, for example, move the 6th graders to the middle school? Then what do we do?
Pretty good.
So,
We don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think middle school's taking $23 million.
There are some schools that have 6th through 8 now that are talking about moving the 6th grade back. I know Central Square is for one.
Hudson's also.
well, I guess I'm just saying that
You're
it's
using it as
conversation
an
that we as a,
example.
right,
Yeah.
but we as a board haven't,
Right.
this current board hasn't had. So
Right.
I'm just saying, this is a big decision to make when I feel like some conversations haven't been had. So, that's my.
Or they haven't been had since you've been on the
That's what I
board.
said, this
Yeah.
current board
They've been
hasn't
had.
had the discussion. I mean, I would love to be able to hear both sides of the argument. I mean, I have never heard them, I know what I've looked up myself, but I'm just saying, if we're gonna commit to a 15-year, total.
Investment in our school.
Yeah, I wanna make the best decisions with the future in mind, not just today.
So do we.
I'm not saying you
Yep.
don't, I'm just saying I'd like us to have a
Mhm.
discussion about that, so.
Yeah, the board should have the knowledge around it.
Mhm.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, they said, I feel like we
It's so cold back here. Slow it down.
It'll put into a deep freeze.
Put on somewhere. Oh, who's this one? No, it's not mine. Oh, no, where is it? Yeah.
Next on the agenda tonight, we will move to the consent agenda. Item A, minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of December 5th, 2017. Special education report, December 19th, 2017. Treasurer's consolidated report, budget status report, district financial report, and fund balance projection for November 2017. Budgetary transfer report, November 2017. Extra classroom activities fund report, Oswego Middle School, November 2017. And extra classroom activities fund report, Oswego High School, November 2017. Any questions on those items? Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just, Nancy, would you mind explaining what you explained to me, the question about, in the,
Budget transfers?
yes, thank you.
Certainly. In the budget transfers, there is $105,000 transfer, and that is in the capital fund. If you see HREN, that is H renovation. All it is a reclassification from a consultant line to a general construction line, which is where we have to put it in terms of the capital project. And when you read the budget transfer report, you have to remember that if you look at the bottom total, it always references what's up above.
And the description that was on there was for the one that's below it,
The description that is below the total amount
Right.
is for the one below that.
Oh, okay, that was the confusion.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
the issue.
Thank you.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is the Board of Education. There's one item, a temporary voting site for the March 6, 2017 capital project vote. That would be to hold, the St. Paul's cannot be used for the capital project, so that would be to use the Ed Center, the old Ed Center. If I could have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Karen, does that mean that's the only voting site we'll have, or does that mean you're just replacing St. Paul's with?
Just
the other?
replacing St. Paul's. There still will be Scriba Fire Station, Elam Grace, and Oswego Town Hall. They have all said we could use their
Just
facilities.
couldn't happen on that day there for them.
Yeah, they already have somebody scheduled for that date in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next is curriculum with Carrie.
And this is for the response to intervention revised manual, the RTI manuals. State ed requires that you revisit your RTI policy every 3 years. And we brought a committee together last summer, looked at our plan over, made some revisions, and rolled it out to the teachers and principals last year. And so we're putting it forward to the board to be approved, to be accepted, so we can then place it on our website. The state also requires that we place our RTI policy on the website. And it is a multi-tier intervention system to early identify struggling learners and to put wraparound services around those struggling learners. We have a 3-tiered system.
Now, is that
Carrie, one of the things that I wanted to say to Amy especially, you know, being new, we've had a lot of questions about special ed and students that are in need of support within the classroom. If you take time and go through this, it will clearly show you what happens with the students that we're trying to figure out how to maintain them in a classroom, and what the protocol is, who's involved in it, what tier 1 means, what tier 2. So, you know, really look through that. I know we had a presentation, but this really, you did a great job on revamping this.
It's important to point out that so many people think that RTI is about special education. RTI is response to intervention for all students at any level, so that tier 1 might be intervention for students that are, you know, identified at a building committee, and that intervention happens in the classroom. And then tier 2 intervention might be jacking it up a little bit, and they have not responded well to tier 1 intervention, so they might go to an AAS service provider. That would be a tier 2 intervention, and then so on. And ultimately, and only if the other 2 tiers of intervention haven't been successful, would a child be considered for some special education program because through testing they've been identified as having some deficit.
Yeah.
So 2 out of the 3 tiers really have nothing to do with special ed.
right, that can just be, that's what I was
Yeah.
going to ask.
But it will
is-
clarify to
Kids
you.
are gonna read it.
Yeah.
Each
Yeah,
tier
that's
is
what I was
more
gonna ask.
intense with the amount of time and the amount of students sitting in the classroom. So tier 2 would probably be only 8 students sitting with one teacher.
Right.
And for 30 minutes, where tier 3, maybe 3 times a week, where tier 3 is more intense. It might be a one-on-one
Right.
with a teacher, and it would be maybe 5 days a week, 30 minutes. So it's just more intense as you go up the tiers until, if the student continues to struggle, then you take the next step for special ed.
Sounds
Well, I mean,
great.
I definitely, I mean, I knew about this because one of our kids went to reading in elementary school, so I definitely understand all this and know that it
Yeah.
wasn't a special ed thing. My question was gonna be, actually, I had 2 questions, is, like, does it show, and I read through it, but I couldn't tell, like, does it show what you actually changed? Did I miss something, or, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it says revised, like, what was revised?
No, we didn't highlight any of the revisions. Some of the things I can tell you that we revised, we went through our resources that we're using and made sure that those resources are evidence-based, because the state's requiring everything be evidence-based that you use with students. So we went through the resources we had in our old plan, ensured they were evidence-based, ensured that we even had them still. Some of our resources aren't, they're not all together, the teachers come and go, so we want to make sure all students had access in all 5 elementary buildings. We also looked at the names of what we called our teams that meet around gathering the data. We changed the names. We ensured that those teams were meeting in all 5 elementary buildings. And we made sure that the percentage that we said a student would test into tier 2, we tweaked that up at 1%. So the tweaks weren't large, but there are a few things that were changed.
And then, like, my other question is, and this could be, I mean, and I was thinking about it before, like, what are, and I'm not asking you to answer this right now, just
Okay.
maybe in the future, something that we could talk about and see, is like, what is our, like, how many kids in the district does this affect? Again, I'm not asking you right now, I'm just saying, like, down, and then what is, like, our
Success rate.
Thank you, yes.
You're welcome.
Success rate. So how long typically does, once a child is identified, like, for example, my daughter wasn't identified until 2nd grade in reading. And now she's doing fine, but she needed those couple years of having she was only the tier 1, I think. But, like, how long typically does it take for a child to test out? Like, how effective are we in providing this additional help to get the kids back to where they're supposed to be?
And that's where continual progress monitoring happens, the assessment that's in the plan. The students are progress monitored at least twice a month.
Yeah.
And if the intervention that is being used for 6 to 8 weeks doesn't work, they change the intervention. So sometimes a student does have 2 years gap they have to make up, so they're in the RTI process longer than others. Some, we do know, have to stay in that RTI process all the way up through the middle school. We try to be as fluid as possible.
Yeah, because I know, like, well, in my daughter's case, I mean, she was right on the bubble, you know, so every year it was like, oh, she could, oh, you know, and then she got to middle school, and now she's fine. But I just wonder, you know, as far as what they're actually doing in the classroom and, like, how successful we are, whether it is a bubble kid like my daughter, or, you know, like, how successful we are in accelerating their.
I think it's a case-by-case
It is.
basis. I was a reading teacher for 10 years at Kingsford.
Mhm.
And it was a different model then. We didn't have RTI. We were measuring our kids' success rate on qualifying state scores. They would, at the time, if a child could qualify to come into reading at 30th national percentile on a standardized test or below, they could qualify at the 40th national percentile as a maintenance student, and they would exit at the 50th national percentile. It's a little bit different now because we have different levels of intervention, but I think what's really important to point out, and we recorded the second part of the next WBUC show this morning, and I had Sherry Beck with me, and she's the coordinator of the new district literacy task force. And we talked a lot about this, and one of the things that we have to take a critical look at through the literacy task force and through Carrie's office is there's a gap right now that exists between the success rate of our students graduating at about 81% in August. Our August graduation rate is somewhere between 81 and 83%. but yet only 45% district average, Gary, which is 39% are qualified, are on the New York State assessments are proficient. So there's a problem between our exit criteria on New York State Regents exams and the New York State graduation rate, and the fact that nothing magic happens between our 4th grade New York State ELA test at 35% proficient and 81 students graduating with Regents or Advanced Regents diplomas. So that's one of the things we're looking at too. Our teachers are as talented as they've ever been, and we didn't, there's a reason why we had 75 to 85% proficiency rates on New York State assessments, and now we're at 35. There's a gap that exists between the delivery of instruction and the assessments. And so there's a lot of, and we get beat up a lot about that, and it ticks me off a little bit. We're graduating really great kids that are going to really great schools at about 83%. And where so much attention is paid to 35, 38% proficiency rate on New York State ELA tests, when we know that the readability on those tests are 1 to 2 years above the grade level they're assessed at, and we also know that the New York State reading tests are largely about writing, and the New York State writing tests are about content. It's an uphill battle, but good question. Got me going now.
Thank you.
My computer died, so I
Could I have a motion, please?
What are we voting on?
I was gonna say, what the heck are we voting on?
Second.
Second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Personnel with Heidi Sweeney.
A, professional staff recommendation for a leave of absence. Carrie Joyce, who's an elementary teacher at Fitchie Park School, is extending her leave through March 15th.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
B, extra compensatory position recommendations for in-service instructors. We bring groups of names forward. They may teach an in-service class. Usually they come through Carrie's office as they attend an in-service instructor class, so that we know we're providing good quality and very professional development to our teachers and our staff members. So this is a group of people who will be approved on an as-needed basis.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
C, extra compensatory recommendations for Riley. We have a group of after-school homework program, always as needed basis, and this is similar to the ones you've seen before, different groups at different elementary schools.
Questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
D, extra compensatory position recommendations for intramurals. We had adjusted the stipend amount based on some conversation that we had over the last few months with Okta. So it brings it more in line with our shared understanding of the structure. Those buildings with 2 people, so one person is doing boys, one person is doing girls traditionally, or a Tuesday, Thursday split. You'll see 2 names. In the buildings with only 1 name, only 1 person applied, and so they're doing both days.
Questions?
How many days, it says 2 days a week, but how many weeks do they actually participate in that?
4 sessions of 8 weeks.
So 32.
Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
E, extracurricular volunteer recommendations, a group of athletic volunteers for some of the coming or underway sports seasons.
Questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
F, support staff recommendation, a leave of absence. At our previous meeting, Jean Cavalier was appointed to be the new cook here at FLS because Mary Ann Pettit is retiring shortly. And so she's taking a leave of absence from her food service helper position at OMS.
Questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
G, support staff recommendations for probationary. Most of these are as a result of some recent civil service exams. People can be appointed into positions pending test results, and then they become probationary. So we had some test results on a variety of people, and they moved now into a probationary position.
Questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
H, support staff recommendation. We have the middle school regular nurse has just left on maternity leave, and so she'll be out through the remainder of the school year. Erica DeMott was the part-time nurse at Minetto. So we're just bringing this forward so you understand that she's moving into a full-time position at the middle school while that nurse is out on her maternity leave.
Are we filling the part-time position in Minetto?
We are. So we have another nurse whose student is not attending currently. So Christina Chamberlain and Dr. Duffy and I were able to have conversations about how to move some of the available nursing staff around so that we can maintain the coverage in all the buildings.
Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I is our usual substitute and temporary employee appointments.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is finance with Nancy Squires.
A is a contract with Oswego County Opportunities for the Frederick Layton and Fitchie Park Elementaries, not to exceed $298,020. And this is through the Empire State After School Grant.
Questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second? Oh, Brian.
Second.
Was that a question, Brian, or?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
B is another contract with Laura Payne Borsey for consulting services. And this is also through the Empire State After School Grant. And this is for $3,475.
Any questions? Motion?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong amount.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I like it better.
Oh, I should try.
I lost my place in there. $22,500.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
C is a contract with Vendy and Learn Through Movement for professional development in the amount of $3,000, again through the Empire State After School Grant.
Questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
D is a contract with Coco.
Coco, yeah.
Did I say it right? And this is for family-oriented services with the FAST program at a cost of $63,750, again through the Empire State After School Grant.
Questions?
Love this program. My office used to fund it. Gotta change the name of it though. Safe Harbor is a sexual trafficking of youth program in New York State. It's a large program. We've had a couple of conferences in Oswego County over the last couple of years. In my circle of talking to people, there's already confusion, so I'm just, you can research it, make your own decision, but,
We did change the name.
Oh, you
It's
did?
Safe Bucks.
oh, 'cause
Yeah,
it says
we
Safe
took
Harbor and,
Oh, it still does on
Yeah.
on
Yes.
the contract? I didn't
Yeah.
catch that. I'm
Okay.
sorry, we did. We had
Yeah.
already gotten that
Okay.
feedback. I
Okay.
think you brought it last
Oh,
time,
yeah, I
and we
just saw
did
it.
change it to Safe Bucks.
Okay.
So our name of the after-school program is Safe Bucks. Sorry about
no,
that.
that's good. I was
That
reading it
a
in
quick
there.
catch.
I was reading it in there. All right. Oh, that's great program. Yeah.
Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
E is a contract with Mayon Reader Software for professional services for $3,475, again, to be paid through the Empire State After School Grant.
Questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Got a lot of mileage out of that grant.
We're gonna get a lot of mileage out of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
A lot of work for Carrie.
Yeah, sorry, Carrie.
F is for the board to accept the tax assessment reduction for DKR and Kin Bloom. Their assessment is reduced from $7,155,000 down to $6 million, and we're looking at an approximate refund of $51,000.
Questions?
I've got some questions. I know this is, you guys are somewhat familiar with this certiorari, and they make these agreements and the assessments, and they go through that stuff. But if I read this the right way, Mike Coles, the original commercial appraiser, came back and said, was in agreement that their new assessment of his old assessment, and made the opinion that we should take the deal because he thought that his old assessment could be off by up to $2 million. Am I understanding that right? And so who else do we have that we can use as opposed to relying on him?
Well, what we've done in the past is if it is a huge case, and the board, it's at the board's discretion who they want our attorneys to battle on our side. If we want to do our own appraisal, we would have to pay for it.
I understand that.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure we paid Mike Cole something, didn't we? Or
No,
we're just using his opinion without, we haven't gone to any independent source to refute his two assessments.
No. I mean, there are times that we can, and if you want me to talk to our attorneys to say, prior to the settlement of these cases, the board would like to weigh in on whether or not we should have an independent assessment done.
Well,
We
I'd
can
at least
do
like to
that.
look at the historic assessment pattern, right?
Okay.
When did it go up to 7 million? Why does he feel like it's only worth 5.2 or 5.3 or
I
whatever?
read that as well, and I went, wow.
I'm like, it's your assessment, you're debating with, I just didn't understand, right? And it's gonna cost us $53,000. So what are our choices? Can we, if we don't settle this, where are we at? I don't understand the consequences of not making this decision now.
Well, and what the process is Bonchenik and King says that the board has to approve this before it goes back to the judge to make the settlement official.
So if you
To
don't
get the-
approve
we
it,
don't approve it.
then Don can dig deeper into it. We could not approve it.
Well, then
But then we're
yeah.
paying, we'll pay for the legal, we'll pay for that work. Right now, we use them for the bigger ticket tax cert changes.
I get it.
And the smaller ones that we think are likely legit, we don't spend the money on legal service to challenge. We
I understand,
see
legal
how the
services
process
are
falls out.
incredibly
But
expensive.
if this
yeah.
is one that you think
I don't know.
Nancy agrees is maybe squirrely, maybe we should look at it.
How is
And
the
we don't
city,
have to
what's the
vote
city's
on it.
involvement in this?
Yeah, can we
We
can
can
table
pull
it?
we
Pull
table it.
The city
Yeah.
of Oswego.
Is the city involved in this, John?
No, no, I just read, I read
I
the
thought
agenda.
maybe-
Well, how could they?
No, I don't,
The city's gotta be involved. They
Yeah, they're
can't just-
involved in it.
They can't
Well,
just do the school tax, they gotta do
yeah.
all tax.
I'm not representing any city entity.
No, no, no,
Nor am I
Challenging
speaking
it?
to it. I had, that's at the assessor level. I read the agenda based on what Mike Coles assessed it for $7,100,000 back whenever. And now they're fighting that. his opinion says that it could be worth as little as 5.2. They're willing to settle at 6 or 6.1, and he is encouraging that deal.
Okay, so the city has gotten a copy of this too. What was their reaction?
He doesn't know.
Because,
I don't know.
no, I'm not
I'm
asking,
just-
I'm
oh,
asking Nancy.
all right.
I don't know.
We don't care.
I don't know. All I.
Table it, and we'll look. and-
Yeah,
Table
I
it.
guess-
Motion to table it.
Second motion.
Yeah, because, you know, I was, to me, it's kind of like the same deal with the Scribe when we negotiated with the plan. Because the town assessor and Scribe sets the rate, and we're at the table, but we really don't, we don't have a voice.
Right?
And I'm wondering if the same thing may happen in the city. If the city's already said, okay, you know, we're happy with this, and then what leg have we got to stand on, I
Yeah.
guess is the
Right.
question. So,
I'll reach out to Bunch and I can bring tomorrow.
Yeah.
yeah.
Great.
We need to vote on
We
it.
vote
Yeah.
on the table.
I have a motion from Linda and a second from Tom to table this resolution to a later date. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
G is a contract for professional surveying services with CT Mail, and this is to have the Layton property, the middle school, and Minetto, and the high school property surveyed as part of the capital project.
Those are those aerial pictures of like the.
No, they have to do the physical survey in
Physical
order
survey,
to,
okay.
it's a part of the,
Any other questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
H contains two budget transfers. One is for $3,000, and that's to transfer from a consultant line to an equipment repair line, and that is in the music program.
Any questions?
Can we do them both together?
Sure, and the other one is for $23,500 that we just spoke about, and that we're transferring from hospital and medical insurance to building and grounds contractual expenses in the amount for the CT Mail survey.
Is that typical to transfer from the hospital medical insurance to something
Well,
like this?
what we've done, Amy, is we have been trending very, very well again this year. So we have some excess in that account. We look at it on a monthly basis. We look at the claims coming in and the bills we have to pay out because we're self-insured.
Mhm.
And because we know that we have some excess money in there, and this bill wasn't, this expense wasn't in the budget, and we have to find the money somewhere, that's where the transfer's coming from.
It's a safe pocket.
It's a safe pocket, and that's the investment into what we're doing. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Can I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I is for the acceptance of a donation from Oswego Family Physicians for a trophy case valued at $761.77.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you to the good doctors.
J is donors choose donation to Frederick Layton School for flexible seating, and the amount is $708.20.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And K is another donation from Donors to Choose, and this is, again, for Layton School for HP Chromebooks and licenses in the amount of $1,276.80.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next on the agenda is items from board members. Would any of the board members have any items tonight?
Okay. I just wanted to, I guess, use this to follow up on some things we talked about last board meeting. And one of them was the conflicts in our schedules. And I know Brian and I, because we kind of came to the agreement that if two or more board members had a conflict, the boys' basketball game, I forgot to write down the date. Do you remember? Is it
February 19th.
is it not till, but just to put that on, you know, the radar that I
Which
know
one did you
we,
send me the real date, the real actual, the event date?
Yeah.
We'll have to look at it.
Yeah,
And then what, I guess
it's a
what the
boys
procedure
JV
will.
basketball, it's a
And then
home
I'll
game.
poll the board to see what times
Yeah,
or
that's what I was gonna say.
day.
Yep,
Okay. It would be February 6th.
yeah, that's what I was thinking, it was February 6th.
Not a town. Okay.
And it's a home game, right? That was the only conflict that we had in the boys' schedule. I think there was a home game that conflicted with the same time as the 5 o'clock board meeting. And I didn't know if anybody else had any other conflicts that they wanted to say.
Yeah. The next board meeting. Can we change it to Wednesday?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Damn, you're pushing 80, you may not make that.
Yeah, I will.
Any other items?
I just wanted to just mention, I probably should have done last meeting, that again, I think the Oswego City School District was well represented at the tree lighting this year. My office does a lot with that, and whenever we reach out to the district for help, they're always volunteering. This year, I think it was the kids from Riley that were over there, and they did a really good job. And it's hard, it's a lot to ask them. It's pretty cold that day, so they didn't come in before. It's kind of a rainy day, and they were all good. So I mean, it was just a good showing in the city, just to have the kids up there. So, yeah.
Any other items?
Just a couple things on my end. We were supposed to get, I believe, we were supposed to get badges and stuff like that when we first come on the board. Is that for scanning in? Is that true or not true? Security stuff?
No, historically, the only board members who got badges, scanning badges, were facilities committee board members who would get badges to scan into schools. Other than that,
I just didn't know because we were set
So
up,
it's just
we were
blessing.
set upstairs to take pictures and they said we'd be getting a badge and we never got it.
Yeah, I
So-
have.
Oh, an
just a
ID,
badge,
an ID, yeah.
Yeah, we don't
so
have
I
any.
you haven't gotten your IDs?
No.
Oh, you don't have your ID?
No.
I'll look into that with Jamie.
Okay.
Got it.
Then the other question I had is homeschool suspension, in-school suspension. Is the homeschool actually homeschool suspension, or do they get brought into the schools?
Hey, do you want to talk about that?
It's dependent on the infraction. So there are some students who might have an out-of-school suspension that results from a choice that does not directly impact the safety of the school. And so they are, through a discussion with Mr. Wallace, sometimes me, sometimes Carrie, depending on the level, sometimes with Dr. Bui, we make the determination about whether that student would be allowed to come to school. They're on a separate shuttle, separate entrance, they're escorted in and out, and attend school in our OSS room versus our in-school suspension room. And then we also have at-home tutoring, so if a student has been determined through their actions to not be a safe bet to allow back in school for a period of time, then we make arrangements for them to be tutored at home.
Any other items?
I guess just my only other thing was a follow-up to what I brought up during the presentation. I mean, I don't know how other board members feel about having a discussion about long-range planning, but I just feel like, you know, my feelings are that to be making decisions today, we have to look at tomorrow. And that's the only way I'm gonna feel comfortable. I don't know how anybody else feels
What
about that.
type of decisions are you looking to make? You know, I'm just thinking that, you know, give me an example so I can understand what type of projection you're looking at.
Well, I'm just looking at, like, so for example, even with the fields, I asked a question about is Rhonda comfortable with the amount of fields? Is there enough practice space? Like, were those projections into the future in programming and all that, were those things looked at to say?
They were all
we
discussed
can
and decided
meet
upon.
the needs of, you know, the students who are participating. And then in regards to the buildings, when you look at the dollar amount on each one of the buildings, and I know that, like I said, the conversation of moving 6th graders to the middle school, and everybody, well, those of you who've been on the board have said, oh, we've had that discussion, and my point is that this current board that's making this current decision to put this to vote never had that discussion. So, I mean, I would love to hear both
Some history around it
points.
maybe. I mean, I think that's what Ian's asking for, is just if there's some history around that kind of stuff to help us, obviously, with the decision going forward. It may not change anything.
Right,
But just
to
having,
put it
having
out
the
there, I
knowledge.
feel like, I mean, before I vote and say, oh, this is absolutely what we're gonna do, and if we're gonna put all this money into, you know, each one of the elementary schools, as well as the middle school, and then 5 years down the road, we're like, oh geez, we totally should have moved the sixth graders to the middle school. And it's like, well, while we gutted it, maybe we should have done that then, and not, now we did it, and now we have to spend more money
But
to.
Dean, part of the process that we've been through over the past 6 years has been projecting out and looking at long-term range for what the needs of the district would be. And then when that plan, the design, went into the state, that was part of that process. If we went back and started shifting around, working on this building or not this.
You never know
Now
what's gonna
we-
happen. We
Yeah,
don't
well, the
know
federal-
what
it would-
happened in 10
Right,
or
I mean,
15
it would be
years.
like slowing things up. Am I wrong in
Oh.
thinking that?
No, we.
Yeah, I
we
mean,
have to-
we
if you're gonna
put
move
a
forward with
plan
a
in,
capital
that's what that
project,
was.
it's been 6 to 8 years of planning.
And
Hey,
that's what
you
that
gotta
was
go.
approved on by the state. If we went back into that plan that has taken us this many years to put together, and we said, oh no, we're gonna close this school, now we gotta redo that plan, am I right or wrong?
Yeah. Yep.
And we
Yeah,
gotta go
yeah,
back to
totally.
the state, and now we're back to
So
the
what if it's
beginning.
just moving sixth grade to the middle school?
We
What if
keep-
it's leaving all of the elementary schools open and moving the sixth graders to the
We
middle?
did a
Well, I-
study, there isn't room for the sixth grade in the middle school.
Well, how did we all fit there?
Well,
When
you
the
did,
enrollment-
this
You
was
didn't,
all
the study
part
was, the study was made
prior to you
We
coming.
gotta
prior
remember-
to your coming.
When we put
No, not
this,
here on the board, I'm saying when I was in school, and we had higher numbers of enrollment, and we all fit in the middle school.
I think
Like-
Programming was
and so,
different.
like,
Programming's different for
Yeah,
sure.
And the
the
codes, the New York State codes have changed too. One of the things, when we looked at it a few years, about 4 or 5 years ago, moving sixth grade out there, I don't remember who the architect was at the time, I don't know if it was King or whom, but New York State said we don't have enough bathrooms. We'd have to
There's only
reconstruct the
2 bathrooms
bathroom.
in the middle school.
Pardon me?
There's only 2 bathrooms in the middle school.
right,
Yeah.
that was
And
one
there's
of
only like 3
the,
stalls in each bathroom, so.
So it would have meant adding a lot more bathrooms, major construction, and as someone said earlier tonight, an addition to the building. And that's why it was decided not to do it at the time. And there's
that's
some
what's good
questions
about
about.
having some longevity on the board also, is that, you know, we don't wanna go back to the beginning.
And you gotta remember something that sometimes we forget, and this is not a criticism, but a program recommendation like a realignment of grade configuration to a 6, 7, 8 middle school should be coming from us. We should have some sense that in the future, that based on the administrative philosophy in our district right now, what other districts are doing around us and across New York State, that would be something we should be coming to you and saying, maybe it's time to look at a 6, 7, 8 or a 5, 8 configuration for middle school again. If the board wants us to do a study on middle school configuration, I'd be glad to do that.
But that study's
That
been-
capital project's not gonna happen.
That
right
study
now.
was done
We do that.
4 or 5 years ago. I'm
Right.
sure it's sitting somewhere.
Well,
on
we
a
had a
shelf.
lot
Pull it
of
out.
people come in, we even talked about closing the school down, and then we did a busing, a revamp of all the busing in that plan, and
I did a
the
redistricting.
community
I did
came
a
out in
redistricting study
droves
for the
and
district
didn't
in
want us to close
2010.
the school.
Well, nobody ever wants change.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
that's a
I think
pretty
that's
universal
true.
truth, so.
Yeah.
And change is good, and,
Yeah.
and
No, I'm not
anytime that you
arguing that, I'm
propose
just telling you
something,
historically,
people are
that
gonna
we've been
complain.
through this process
And that's-
before this plan came out.
But how has it prepared us for anything in the future, right? We've made decisions based on that, or you have in the past. But how are we better prepared? what I believe Amy's leading to, and she's questioning maybe some of the choices that we will be making shortly. I think, provided the data that you guys have already gone through, I don't think that would be a big deal. I think to have a real conversation about what the numbers, what do we anticipate enrollment, how do we see these things going, having a conversation with everybody to make a decision, like Sam says, to not bond a particular school or to give us the opportunity to use that in the future makes sense. It just makes sense to have those conversations. And so when we're making those choices to bond against each of these individual schools, based on the money that we're putting into them, there's requirements that we have to follow, but we can make some good choices, hopefully, you know, in moving forward. Hopefully somebody doesn't have to make, or that they would have the opportunity to make a decision if they have to.
I think the discussion part is fine, but we also have to take into consideration, we spent a lot of time on facilities putting this together, including a timeline. When's the best time to vote and all of that? We start having discussions, we start pushing these dates back, and you're gonna end up waiting a whole nother year.
I don't think it's impactful to the project. I don't think it is.
Sure it is.
I guess maybe you can help me understand this, Jim. Or somebody
I think
can.
it's
Wait
important. I
a
think
minute.
what Jim's saying is I think you're making a good point. When this board decides to move forward with this capital project, we're not married to particular details associated with the project. Change can be made by this board at any juncture throughout the project. Changes can be made. Just because you vote on a project and the board approves, we need to proceed. And it'll evolve
I
as it
just
happens.
don't wanna have this.
You know, typically, when you go out to a bid in a project like this, and the costs come in, and we say, ooh, costs are gonna be 63 million, we don't have 63 million. So we're gonna be forced to go back and make changes. So as you say, changes can be
Yeah.
made throughout the process.
Yeah, and the project is 10 to 12 years. I mean, a lot of stuff's gonna change from now to then.
Right, and
I
that
can
was my
assure
whole
you.
point when he was here,
But
is
how
that
do you
15 years
project
is a
out?
long time
Yeah.
period.
That's what
To
they,
say,
that's
this
what
is
they
what
are
we're gonna
paid
do, how do we know this is
Yeah.
what we're
They
gonna do?
project
I mean,
all
that's
those costs, all
crazy.
those
10
costs
years,
to going up in the next
7
10 years.
Right.
They have that all built in. That's what they put it together. For
So
38
I guess
cents a thousand.
it's, I just think it's important that when we are making these big decisions, that we are all totally informed, and we have looked at things from every angle, and everybody has had an opportunity to give their point of view. I mean, like I started out the whole thing, I said, I appreciate all of the time that you guys put in. Maybe what we need to do is, after you guys have, at every board meeting, you guys could focus on what you talked about at your meeting, rather than, you know, we don't hear about it until, you know, a big presentation, and then it's just a lot of information to come in. So maybe those kind of things where you guys just, we had as part of the committee agenda, that whoever's, I don't know which one of you guys is the chair of the committee, would give a brief, you know, overview. This is what we talked about, this is what we did. Then that could give us an opportunity to learn about what you guys are learning and doing, and to ask questions, so that it's not so much at these junctures that come so far and few in between. So I think that would be going forward.
Maybe one way to do it is have special board meetings that are only about the capital project periodically, where we talk about just the capital project, you know, how things are going. It could be an exchange, we can bring in the architects, the contractors, once those contracts are awarded, and do it that way. So it's not just on the facility committee.
I would prefer that. I don't want to be the
And
responsible
no.
party to push information out, you know, after a 2-hour facilities meeting, I'm late for something.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, great. I mean, nobody likes
None
that
of
at
us
the board
as
meetings, but
chairman.
it'd be a good way to
We're
do
just
it.
members.
But to share that information, yeah.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think that would
And
give
then- and
everybody,
then
and then
it's
we could have these
Yeah.
conversations about long-range planning and looking, and at least it's extra thoughts.
I think it's a great idea too, because I don't know about you guys, but how many times you get stopped on the street, like, oh, so you're doing this, and you're like,
I
I
have
don't know
no
that.
idea.
And I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times people say, so what's it gonna cost me?
Right.
I don't have that answer for you right now.
On the non-instructional part of the district, the capital project is gonna be the biggest thing you do in your time on the board. So having special board meetings around capital project updates is not a bad idea. And we have a lot of people who are knowledgeable in each facet of that fiscal. We have architects, we have contractors, Dave Christofolis, you know, to give periodic reports and presentations on capital projects is a good idea.
I agree.
Okay, good.
At this time, could I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? May be adjourned.
I was a little off.